Throughout the last couple of years, Boeing has suffered the fallout of negative PR as the result of the mishandling of the 737 MAX engineering, whistleblowers who died under questionable circumstances, and incidents involving Boeing aircraft. The culture at large is railed against Boeing, with YouTubers such as Moist Critical placing Boeing as the tail end of the joke and constant negative press on Boeing's flaws. It's led many to ask the question, what is Boeing's future? Are they doomed to the ether, or is there a possibility of recovery? Stick around to find out. October 29, 2018. Lion Air Flight 610, scheduled to fly from Tangerang to Indonesia, crashed in the Java Sea roughly 13 minutes after takeoff. All 189 occupants perished. Less than 5 months later, on March 10, 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, scheduled to fly from Addis Ababa to Nairobi, crashed near the town of Bishoftu roughly 6 minutes after takeoff, killing all 157 occupants on board. What did both of these crashes have in common? Both involved the 737 MAX, and the cause was determined to be the failure of the MCAS system. It was later discovered that during the production of the aircraft, Boeing was aware of the issues with the MCAS system, but rushed to have the aircraft certified anyways to keep up with the demand of the market. Since then, Boeing has been plagued by aircraft failures and allegations of corruption. One of its whistleblowers had passed away under questionable circumstances, leading many to suspect that Boeing was in some way responsible for his death, not to mention the grounding of the 737 MAX aircraft, hurting not only Boeing, but hurting airlines such as United and Southwest who operate the aircraft. With all that said, it begs the question, what is Boeing's future? Is Boeing doomed to the ether, or is there a chance of redemption? The first thing we must understand is that not all of the issues with Boeing aircraft are the fault of Boeing. For example, recently, a Delta flight had an emergency slide deployed just after takeoff. The case is still being investigated, however, it was an isolated incident that, as far as I've researched, hasn't affected any other 767s or Boeing-made aircraft. In these cases, it's either an issue with that specific aircraft or with the airline involved. For an incident to be an issue with Boeing, it not only has to affect multiple aircraft and different airlines, but it also has to be directly attributed to Boeing's handling or to the manufacturer in question. The other issue that we have to understand is that aircraft issues aren't unique to Boeing. For example, Airbus has fallen into its own controversy from the A320neo, specifically its Pratt & Whitney engines not reaching life cycle projections due to the production of the metals that are used. While there's very little discussion about the issues, it has negatively impacted airlines such as Spirit and Swiss Air, as both have grounded most of its 320neo aircraft. In other words, no manufacturer is immune to issues. It all comes down to how the issues are handled. I believe that Boeing's not going anywhere. The first reason is the duopoly and lack of competition. One of the biggest issues with aviation is the lack of significant competition and burdensome regulations. Not only are there little opportunities to start a manufacturer with the absurd level of regulations and costs, but the only viable alternatives are limited either in resources or circumstances. Boeing and Airbus are the largest commercial manufacturers in the world and have fortified a duopoly thanks to airlines and government contracts. Boeing's biggest customer outside of the airlines is the government, or more accurately, the taxpayer. Boeing and Airbus have oversized contracts with countries across the world producing aircraft for defense purposes. Given that politicians have no incentive to cut costs as it will be covered by the taxpayer and the debt offset to our great-great-great-grandchildren, these companies can set the price to virtually any amount, thereby artificially inflating the costs and fattening the wallets of their investors. Boeing has grown to a point where it's arguably too big to fail, and too much at stake to go tango uniform. On top of that, who exactly is going to replace him? Who else are you going to do business with?
You want me to give you the number of a different cable company that can... Oh, wait, we're it, aren't we?
Of commercial manufacturers besides Airbus, there's Ilyushin and Tupolev. These manufacturers designed aircraft such as the IL-96 and Tu-214. They manufacture both narrow bodies and wide bodies, making them a viable alternative for Boeing. However, there's one issue. Both of these companies are based in Russia. By itself, it's not an issue, but with the current conflict and sanctions on Russia, unless things cool down, it wouldn't be a realistic option. Other options would be regional jet manufacturers such as Embraer and Bombardier. For the most part, they have a solid reputation and great aircraft. However, the largest planes produced are the A220 and E195. For narrow bodies it would work, but for larger wide-body aircraft, there's nothing. The other options are American-based Gulfstream and Cessna. They both have a solid reputation and various aircraft. However, they almost exclusively produce executive aircraft. There's also Lockheed Martin, the designer of the L-1011 TriStar. However, the company in the last 30 years has produced almost exclusively military aircraft, and its track record wasn't perfect. There's also newborn Comac. The company has designed the C919, C939, and others. However, the issue with Comac is the group in charge of it. The Chinese government, who run the company, have a questionable track record with honesty and cooperation. The possibility of similar issues with Boeing is something to consider. While there are other manufacturers, most of them are either exclusive to a particular market amid complicated circumstances or have equally questionable leadership. While Boeing has its competitors, there's a limited amount. Why else would Boeing be able to survive? While Boeing does have a solid monopoly on the market, these issues are impacting their abilities and reputation. If enough airlines and governments decide to pursue the other options, Boeing's leadership will have to realize that at some point, something has to change for the better. I'm no expert in the business, but from my understanding, two things will have to occur. The first is replacing Boeing's leadership. As many of its leaders have pled guilty to fraud, if they're not in prison, they must step down, and people with integrity and stoic thinking would have to take their place. As of the production of this video, Kelly Ortberg has taken the position of CEO. I'm not familiar with his background or track record, however, some have welcomed him with open arms.
One thing he'll bring is he's not the manufacturing guru of Larry Culp. But I do think what Boeing needs is somebody that listens to the FAA, listens to the workforce, to suppliers. He was a big supplier at Rockwell Collins. He was there since 1987, his entire career. And he grew revenues, and he was an organic growth driver. And he not only had a position with Boeing Avionics, but with Airbus, and really took share away from Honeywell on the avionics side. So I think, all in all, Kelly's, the next best thing aside from Larry Culp, who was everybody's #1 pick. But I think he's going to be well liked by the workforce, and Boeing really needs that. And I agree with Bill, this isn't the kitchen sink quarter.
The other thing that has to occur is people forgetting. As time rolls on, the issues will fade into history, provided that Boeing learns from their mistakes. And improving technology along with pioneering other avenues, such as supersonic flight and all-electric aircraft, it will improve the perception of Boeing's practices. So in short, Boeing has a shot at redemption, but it's a long road. There's a great episode of King of the Hill that represents the situation best. On an episode of the show, Alamo Beer has tainted beer that they ship off to Mexico, and it takes Peggy giving the company executives the tainted beer to cause them to change their ways, leading the company leadership to apologize and to take control of the situation.
Vomitando. Vomitando? Sí, el vomito. La diarrhea. La nausea. What in Carmen Sandiego is going on in Mexico?
For the last 20 years, Alamo has been a part of my family, like a favorite uncle who lives in the refrigerator. But you knowingly sold tainted beer to the good people of Mexico. That is not a crime, but it should be. Now, I would like an apology.
Mrs. Strickland, Alamo Beer is not your uncle. We are not your family. We are a Delaware Limited Liability Corporation, and the beer we sell in Mexico is as pure as the beer we sell in America.
This beer is fresh off the line. We've already shipped it all over Texas. Oh, God!
Bavarian purity standards, and I let it get to you anyway. As of today, I am ordering a complete recall of all the Alamo beer in both Mexico and the United States. If we're lucky enough to get your business back, it won't happen again. Because we're not just a company, we're a family, and we're sorry.
I don't understand why that was so hard, but why couldn't he just apologize to my face?
Well, sometimes when people are confronted with their mistakes, they're too embarrassed to admit they're wrong.
All in all, the bottom line is that Boeing, for the time being, is not going anywhere. There's a lot of damage to be repaired and trust to earn back. However, with the change in leadership, a commitment to ethical operations, and with enough time, Boeing can save itself. It's still much too large, and too many groups depending on them to end up going Tango uniform. How will it transpire? As I said before, I'm no expert, and this is just my opinion, but the succession of Ortberg is a step in the right direction, as far as I can determine. What are your thoughts on Boeing? Do you think they're doomed, or can Boeing rectify the past? Let us know down in the comments.